Look at India, Canada, the US, Philippines, and the rest. They have what is called Economic Advisory Body. Now, in India, the Economic Advisory Body is not seen in their constitution, but they also adopted that structure, that the economy, so that a body will provide independent advice to the Prime Minister, in trying to manage the economy, especially during times of difficulties. And the membership of the advisory committee comes from top business people, top economists, etc. So they put them together and they provide advisory services to the Prime Minister. So in this case, we are talking and the cabinet is the one that advises the president, the structure is not a wayward structure. It's not in the constitution also, but it is not acceptable to trivialize it the way Dr. Baumia seemed to be doing with the economic management. I do believe that, as we see in various countries, we still need, even though our structure shows that the governor of the central bank is a technical advisor to the government, and we have other people who do advise. But those structures are in other countries, but they see the need to put some people together, but it is on independence basis. They are not looking at the political affiliation of the people. They believe that their experiences is such that they understand how the economy is going. They understand what to be done to keep the economy moving in a certain direction. And those people come to provide those advice to the Prime Minister or to the President, or in our case, to a cabinet. So that is the historical point, and that's how it also sits into some global dimension of economic advisory body to the governance of those countries. So I believe even if we don't have economic management team in the structure that we have now, we still need some advisory body to advise the president, to advise cabinet on very important issues as to how the economy should be managed.
Hello, Prof.
Hello?
Yeah, are you done with your point, please?
Yeah, that's my preliminary comment.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. So at this point, if you just joined us, you've joined the Norvan Reports Economic Governance Platform Twitter space or X space series, let me put it that way. And tonight we are dealing with a very important topic. And our topic for tonight was, should Ghana have an economic management team or an economic advisory council? And the critical question that we've put across tonight, that you can, also share your thoughts. And I will ask my IT guys to quickly tweet this question, and then we're able to see what your thoughts are, is what is the political risk to us as a nation to have a VIP or a running mate becoming the head of the economic management team? We've had some history and the background of the economic management team. So right now, from Rawlings to Kufua, we never heard of these committees, but they existed. And were not headed by the vice president. So it actually started where having the running mate or the vice president, let me put it that way, heading started from under the late Professor Mills, where Dramani Mahama, the former president, became the head of economic management team. But how did even this come public? It came public when the current vice president, in his campaigns, started hammering on the failed nature of the then vice president, not being able to, lead the economic management team. And remember, his political party at the time then pushed the agenda that he was economic messiah. From 2017 till now, I leave that for you to, tell us whether we've done well or not done well as a nation. It's not for me to say, but the decision is yours. Now, we've seen how this is going and how that is becoming, a very pivotal point in the next campaign that we're going to be having in this nation. And that is why we put together this particular topic. And we've told you that Norvan Reports, yes, you know us to be discussing very economic issues. But tonight, we find ourselves at no other place than at the intersection of politics and economics. And what we are doing is exploring the potential political risk of having the vice president or running mate at the helm, of the economic management team in Ghana. And that's what we've put together this guest. If you don't know, we're also live on ABC News GH. We are live over there and it's interesting, very, very, very interesting. So the ABC News GH, we're also live on it. Those of you watching us on TV, thank you very much for making time with us. Let me go to Professor Kobe Mensah. And Prof, you are political, you are will I say, a good person in the area of, how will I put it, marketing, political marketing. Let me put it that way. In your experience, I want us to share your thoughts on this topic, but in your experience, what will be the primary political risk associated with having a high-ranking political figure like the vice president lead an economic management team, especially in the context of a country like Ghana? And how that affects the party?
Thank you for having me. Let me say hello to my colleagues, Professor Gachi, Dr. Theo Achampon. I'm sure you can hear me. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, you're very loud and clear, sir, please.
Okay, excellent. Well, Norvan, per the question, I think I would draw my commentary from political communication. And I'm hoping that you would remember what you learned in the class, some of the definitions. I'm sure you remember them, hopefully. Well, when you take, the definition of politics, perhaps that could actually answer the question that you are posing. Now, obviously, when we talk about politics, we'd always say that there are two, definitions to them. There's one that we call the aspect perspective of politics, which basically says that in every aspect of human life, there is politics. So long as there's a structure, so long as there's authority, so long as there are resources to be distributed, there is politics. And then, of course, what we call the domain perspective, which basically we're talking about politics in its purest sense, or politics with a big P, in its purest sense, as in governance, institutions, authority, that kind of thing. Now, so if you ask the question, is there a political risk, having the vice president, championing or heading a certain economic management team, which my colleagues have authoritatively explained. Now, I would also give you another, a strong, kind of assertion that Blondel actually makes. Blondel says that politics is actually a coalition of interest people or a coalition of interested people. These are stakeholders with deep sense of interest in the resource distribution of a particular polity. Now, if you look at the vice president, obviously is one of the key stakeholders in the party or in the governance structure. So if a party takes power and, they actually distribute that particular authority, obviously the vice president is key in that, which means that the vice president has a very topical interest in the the political system or in the governance and whatever it does. So it would be sensible for you to say that because of the importance of economic issues in a country, perhaps if the president per the role has a lot to do with, then of course the vice president with that heightened interest should really take some key responsibilities to ensure performance, to ensure efficiency, etc. In that governance. So one of the main pillars of government, one of the main pillars of the welfare of the state is economics, and so you would actually think that it is the right thing for the vice president to be at that particular helm of overseeing issues to deal with the economy of the country. But that also goes back to the earlier kind of premise that I gave you in terms of the distribution of resources and how the vice president being part of a coalition of interest. Now, in that sense, you would think, or you would agree, that perhaps there could be decisions that may not necessarily be of the interest or in the interest of the country, but it could be in the interest of the party or the governing party. And so they could actually take such a decision, all right, because it could actually benefit, the party in government, not necessarily, the country or the state, for example. But you could also argue that perhaps it is also a certain structure to serve as a counterpower, because don't forget, our finance ministry, and most people don't take, notice of our finance ministry is actually, the right name is the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, which means that the ministry itself has that particular structure to plan for the economic well-being of this country. The ministry itself not only finance, but is the economic planning. But of course, the EMT or whatever we'll call it could actually serve as a counterbalance, making sure that the decisions that is being taken at the Ministry of Finance, are actually in the interest of the state, and perhaps could be, what do you call, could be perused or could be checked by a certain, EMT. And as Professor Gachi said earlier, in the past, that particular function was not necessarily political, i.e., was not necessarily headed or steered by a political actor as a vice president. It could be someone with competency, technical competencies, that could actually, see to that particular rounding of the EMT, and then with the finance and economic planning as a counter, so that the two of them could actually take good decisions. But of course, as had already been articulated in the past, we never heard that particular entity, because their work was very much technical work, backdoor, etc. Now, I would also add that in the past, we never actually heard that, being an economic somebody or having an economic competences was so much required in the office of the presidency. All right, we didn't have that. In fact, if you look at the history of this country, majority of all the people who have actually served as vice president, I barely remember who was touted as economically competent in that sense. I don't know, but I could hazard a guess that perhaps most of them were not necessarily of economic background and was not necessarily needed. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, depending on where you stand, the media, and I always say the media actually contributed into giving that heightened, interest or heightened expectation to the position of the vice president as an economic somebody when we didn't have that. So, although yes, we probably might have said that a certain, I mean, the political parties, one or two of them, or all of them, had perhaps used this as a certain, have seen a certain advantage in playing that card because of the increasing importance of economic, issues in our country over the years. We might also say that the media actually contributed into making that particular instance happen, because they didn't really, check, or they didn't really, question the political parties. Why do you think this is very important to be in the public glare when it had always stayed as a backdoor, what do you call, unit, or as not so important, to have as a requirement as an economic, qualification someone. So we never had that, but we promoted it over the years. So if you ask me about the risk, I would say that it is both ways. One, because the vice president is a key stakeholder in the governing party and want to ensure of high productivity, high performance in an area that is as important as economic management. It could also be a counterproductive, position to be in, because sometimes politicians actually take decisions not necessarily in the interest of the state, but in their political interest, as we see in the definition or in the assertion of Blundell's, as if a certain political party come to power and all of the players in that party had contributed hugely to the winning of the power, then the question is, if there must be a development in a constituency A, and one of the key players that brought the party to power is actually from constituency B, where do you think the project will go? Because politics, and especially governance, is a coalition of interested parties. Thank you. That would be my initial submission.
Thank you very much. I'm Professor Kobe Mensah, who is a political marketing analyst. Thank you very much. And if you just joined us, thank you very much. You have just made your way to the Norvan Report Economic Governance Platform XP series. And tonight we are looking at the topic which has to do with the topic actually is, should Ghana have an economic management team or an economic advisory council? And the critical question we have asked is, what is the political risk of having the running mate or the vice president become the head of the economic management team? And my guests in their initial remarks have made it very clear. Dr. Thuya Acheampong thinks that, look, this is needless, it's not important. Professor Gachi, sorry, is of the view that it is important. It is not unconstitutional. It can be done. And the media seem to have also played a role in hyping it over the years. That is what Professor Kobe Mensah says to us. And so I'm going to go back to Dr. Thuya Acheampong. And I want to find out from you, in your experience, because you are a political risk analyst, in your experience, what are the primary political risks, associated with having a high-ranking political figure like the vice president lead an economic management team, especially in the context of a country like Ghana?
Yeah, Norvan, again, thank you for that. And okay, let me answer that, and I'll touch on a few other points. See, the thing is, once you have gone around touting a certain experience, credibility, all of that, and then you have the opportunity to now come into power to start implementing some of the things that you said, if you had a chance, you would. And yeah, I'm talking specifically about the current vice president. And you also play the political card, right? Like Prof. Mensah has, expanded on that. Well, you've got the EMT, and as EMT, you were doing X, Y, Z things and all of that, and things backfire. Then, of course, citizens, analysts, commentators will start beginning to ask them questions of, so what was this EMT that you were talking or making a lot of noise about anyway? Is it that you were not given the room to operate, or is it that you didn't even know that constitutionally speaking, the EMT is a subcommittee of cabinet, and you can only, like I said, advise, and if they don't take it or implement it, right, nothing sort of happens. But you have created a certain narrative, and it is that narrative that, politically speaking, in terms of the risk, is now coming back to bite, so to say. And Prof. Gatti also made that point very clearly, and I also tried to make it initially that, look, if you look at our history, most of these EMT and other countries at large, they are fairly technocratic set by nature and by setup, right? They just do work on the quiet. But the moment you try to elevate that role or the work that EMT does and try to make political capital out of that, and things now backfire, then yeah, of course, everybody has a right to begin to now, ask questions around that, and that is precisely really what is happening in my view. So the office of the it's not even an office. The economic management team has been politicized and been used as a conduit to sort of paint a certain narrative that in a way has backfired given some of the recent economic issues that we've had in the country. That is not to say that you don't need some sort of economic management body. My core argument is that you don't need that as even a subcommittee of cabinet, which currently is what it is at the moment. So they do some technical work and they sort of advise. My core argument is that if you want to have an economic advisory council or some sort of body, then you need to give it to teeth to be able to sort of bite somewhat, and you need to give it a mandate and independence that allows it to offer objective, advice, and that would also be sort of visible or out there for everyone to see. Hence why I think that the attempt in 2019 to create that fiscal responsibility advisory council, which was again a creature of statute, is a good first step. However, that needs to be amended, or that act, and luckily under the IMF program, it's one of the core things that we need to work on. Amend that Fiscal Responsibility Act, and also the Fiscal Responsibility Council to make them much more independent. And related to that amendment now becomes the issue of membership of the advisory council. So now I have moved from economic management team, because even the economic management team, if you even decided to stick with that argument, you don't even need the vice president as the head of the EMT. It's neither here nor there. But what is important, I think, for our economic advancement going forward, for me, is really to have an advisory council that is a creature of statute and has teeth and can bite, and the membership is wide reaching, and it also includes even other external members. So currently you look at the people that sit on the Fiscal Responsibility Advisory Council, you got the likes of Dr. Paul Akwa, my good friend Ali Nachia, Dr. Nia Sean, Augustine Prof. Ofusu, and then a few others, right? If you talk to them or probably ask them whether or not any of the sort of advice or work that they've been offering on the side is being wholly taken on board, I don't know, but I'm sure some would have, and for the most part, it probably hasn't, and that's because again it doesn't really have like the teeth to be able to bite, right? So you need to do that. But related to that is that when you expand the membership to bring in other prominent, call it, economic historians or experts and you name it, who are not necessarily Ghanaian, you get a much deeper breadth and a much deeper contextual understanding of the issues. For all of us, and this is my last point, if you go to our history, Kwame Nkrumah, his foremost economic advisor and the person who wrote up a lot of the the development plan, the first 5-year plan and others, Akusumu project, you name it, was actually not even a Ghanaian, right? Professor Talewis was Trinidadian from the Caribbean, and he did quite a lot of the deep thinking and the work together with others to get us established as a sovereign post-colonial nation. I think that as we move towards some sort of council that has power and has mandate, we should include other external members on board the team so that the work that they do becomes even much more deeper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Theo Achampo. Let me come to the Professor Kobi-Mensah, who is a political marketing expert. Let me find out from you and give your giving your expertise here. Could you share with us some of the roles, or let me put it, examples from other countries, if you have, or even if you're looking in country, where political marketing played a crucial role in shaping public perception of economic policies, which was led by high political figure? I'm sure that what readily comes to mind is the last 2016 elections, where we probably saw the vice president now leading and all the hammering of economic messiah and all that. When you do that, I want you also, what advice would you give to the political parties, okay, how they can navigate potential political risk associated with appointing a running mate to oversee an economic management team? I don't know how you're going to be able to deal with this, but I'm sure since you're a professor, you can deal with that for us.
Of course. I mean, you see, the point is that in every aspect of human life, all right, marketing's role, especially when you talk about a subfield of marketing, for example, branding, the role, you have two key roles. One, marketing is supposed to identify you, to the consumer. All right. So the consumer should be able to figure out your product. All right. Immediately the consumer, finds it necessary to, eat or to buy, or sometimes even the consumer is not the one who does that. You actually preempt, all right? Marketers, we preempt the consumer to say that you need A, B, C, D, E. And once the consumer agrees that indeed I need that, and they want to take steps to purchase or to acquire that, it is marketing's job to identify the product to the consumer through branding, all right? Now, second role is to also differentiate your offering from your competitors. So, marketing's job through its baby branding is also to say that, look, amongst the competitors, I am the best, all right? And so buy me. And these are the two key roles marketing play. Now, in our, system, in our country, of course, I have actually argued in one of my papers that political marketing itself didn't start now. If you read about Nkrumah's strategy, and that's one of the things that I argue, because in the political marketing literature, we say 1958 or 57, we talk about, Kelly's work of having, identify, political marketing. But I say that if you go to 1948 and thereabout, Nkrumah's work, and especially when he actually decoupled from, UGCC, he said one thing to his people. He says, go to the voters, sit with them, eat with them, know what, get to know what they want, etc. Now, that's a typical, fulcrum of marketing. Through research, we go to the voter, we get what they want, and etc. And then we use that to offer them the policy. In recent times, now, the very one that you can actually articulate strongly as political marketing is in 2000 elections, when I am sure those of you who are, of my age, or we are around the same age, you would remember the J.A. Kufuor kind of campaign, which Jacob Echebilamte of blessed memory, competently executed
Very
by.
well.
Hello?
Go ahead, Prof.
Okay. Competently executed by selling Kufuor's candidature to us. Now, if you look at how that campaign was prosecuted, the MPP, having realized that Atta Mills and Kufuor had almost the same characteristics, quickly realized that it would be difficult for them to do that first job of marketing or the second job of marketing by creating the differentials between the two of them. Differentiating Atta Mills of blessed memory from Kufuor was going to be difficult because all of them were giants. So the gentle giant that they coined was difficult for them to only use that to serve as a differentiator. And of course, Atta Mills was a gentle guy. He was quiet. He was a giant, just like Kufuor, etc. He had democratic credentials. You couldn't actually argue against that one. So what he did was to pitch Kufuor against Jerry Rawlings, in order that they could actually paint the picture of difference between these two parties for the voters to buy in. So they always had actually pitched and said that when you vote Atta Mills, you are voting Kufuor. And they did that in a daily graphic, what do you call ring, where they had MPP and NDC, and then they actually drew something like Rawlings as opposed to, Atta Mills. So what I'm saying is that it is not marketing's fault because marketing doesn't do the delivery. Marketing is supposed to create a difference between you and your competitor, and also to make sure they can identify you to the voter, for the voter to make a clear distinction in terms of who to vote for. Now, there is the other bit, what we call it delivery political marketing. Every company, no matter how competent your marketing work is, if the product doesn't provide or perform the basic functional need or the basic function, certainly the customer is not going to come back to you. So when you look at the functions, we're talking about what do you call utilitarian of function of the product. We're talking about hedonic function of the product, etc. So many other functions. But the core function of the product to satisfy your basic need, if it's water, to quench your thirst, if it is ice cream, to give you that luxury quenching of thirst in the afternoon, etc. That function has to be performed, and that's what we call delivery in political marketing. If you fail to perform that, certainly the customer is not coming to you. And if you fail, it is not a work of marketing, because marketing doesn't say that, say what you can't perform. Marketing is only saying that, tell the people how different you are from the competitor in order that they can choose you appropriately. When the consumer had done that, then it is your job to make sure that the product performs. If it doesn't, it is not the problem of marketing. So if the party had gone out to sell, for example, a certain candidate, and they have said that they can do this, the people had agreed and had bought into that. It is up to the company or up to the political party to ensure delivery. So I think that's the bottom line. I don't know whether I've satisfied your question.
Well, you have. Let me move to Professor Gachi. For example, sorry, I think we lost you, but I've sent you a request again to be a speaker. If you can just accept it. And let me come to Prof. And let me just remind our listeners that you can also retweet and then get somebody to come on the space. But then from now, what you can do is to tweet at us with your questions and your contributions. And a few of them which have come, I'm going to read through two of them and then go to Professor Gachi. We have Dr. Owusu-Poku writes, we will keep discussing this issue non-stop, but nothing will change if there are no constitutional provisions requiring the finance minister or the cabinet to heed the EMT's advice. Still, in my opinion, the finance ministry and EMT should be combined into one entity. Yeah, that's what Dr. Osepeku writes. And then also Livingstone says, thank you, Professor Gachi, for insight on the historical perspective of the EMT in your preliminary comments. And Walter Uti says EMT, in my view, is just a toothless bulldog. It can advise but cannot bite. Okay, me on point. Okay, so referring to Dr. Theo Champon's first opening remarks over there, and then also he writes again. He said, "Brilliant submission at the poet." Okay, so the poet, that is Professor Kobe Mensah. So let me come to you, Professor Gachi. Now, critics argue that having a vice president or running mate head an economic management team may lead to decisions influenced by political considerations rather than sound economic principles. Since you say, well, it is unconstitutional, since you say it is normal to have an EMT and you think that is something that we need to move it to another level, probably give them the impetus by, backing them with the constitution or with some kind of a law, let me ask you, what safeguards or measures can be put in place to ensure the team remains focused on economic stability or growth? Granted, they've been given that legal backing to do the kind of work that they have to do.
Well, I think first of all, you need to look at the composition of the economic management team currently. Now, the economic management is just putting together some key ministries and then few people who are not part of the appointees of government. So that itself is problematic because finance minister moved from finance ministry to EMT to come and discuss things concerning his work. He may EMT, he may agree with them. So there can be chaos in the economic management team if you bring agric minister and the interior, etc., to put together. So that is the first thing that we need to correct. If we want an advisory body at the highest level, in fact, at that point, we are all looking at outcomes that reflect Article 36(1) of the Constitution that says that the essence of economic outcome is to create maximum happiness for the people. So we bear that in mind, and then we go to Article 35(7) that says something concerning the way we construed projects in the country, where a lot of projects have been undertaken by previous government, and new government come, they abandon it. We pay for them. The loans we are paying also included loans for those projects that we have abandoned, we are not benefiting from. So the purpose of economic management team is to be aligned with the essence of economic management as enshrined in Article 36. And if you understand it from that perspective, then you don't put finance minister and the key minister into a body and say that they are the one advising cabinet. I think their work should be assessed from outside perspective. That is why I say that if you go to India, Philippines, and the rest, the Economic Advisory Council is not made up of any minister. It's made up of people outside, people, etc. They are the people put together to advise, the president and the rest. So we so that the political issues will be taken off from the economic management. Of course, that was a political strategy put up by the MPP to say that now we are bringing an economist to head the economic management. What was being done before. So now that political strategy has now Dr. Bawumia is a presidential candidate. Who is he going to appoint, or who is he going to nominate as a running mate? Is he now going to tell us that running mate should be an economist, or running mate should be something different? So that era has come to an end. We need to now reconstitute our thoughts surrounding how we want some group of people to advise the president or advise cabinet to take decisions that will inure to meeting the needs all the requirements of Article 36 of our Constitution. And again, in law, we say that advice is advice. But I want to indicate that that is not what we see under economy management team. I did explain that from governance perspective, economy management team doesn't take decision. It recommends.
Hello, Prof. Hello, Professor Gachi.
And the rule of thumb is.
Hello, Prof. If you can hear me, if you can position yourself very well, it looks like we are losing you at some point. Hello, Prof. Okay, so at this point, we can't hear Prof very well. I don't know if anybody can hear Prof. It's difficult to hear Prof now. I think we're having some issues, with his connection. So I would go to Dr. Theo Achampong and then pick because I'm sure that I've heard you tonight, Dr. Theo Achampong. You have been very consistent with the argument of having an advisory council and backing them with the law to ensure that whatever they say can be taken. But Dr. Theo Achampong, some others say that really, like you had Professor Gachi just before he went off. He says, "Look, we've come to the end of the era of even having somebody who has economic background as a VIP and then coming to head the economic management team. We do not know what is going to happen with regards to the NDC, as to who John Mahama may pick as his running mate. Is he considering getting an economist? We don't know. We don't know what will happen. But on the NPP side, now the economic messiah is the front runner, and so who does he put there as his running mate? And the argument Professor Gachi is making is that we've come to the end of that era, and so we need to begin to change our thinking and everything. And he seems to support where you are coming from. What would you recommend, looking ahead, should be done, in order for us to navigate the potential political risk associated with appointing either a VIP or a running mate to lead an economic management team? Dr. Chiachampo, if you can hear me, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Yes, hi, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Something happening. No, I wholeheartedly agree with Prof. Look, the point is that you cannot impose or say that your vice president must be an economist. There's nothing whatsoever, if you look at the constitution and the requirement of being a VP, that says that you've got to have somebody that has an economics or whatever. At the end of the day, it's even if we accept the argument that you need some economic management team, which is a subcommittee of cabinet, they are going to do some technical work and advice. There will be technocrats there. There are people who would support that work. So you don't necessarily need an economist or a financial person to lead the team. Nothing whatsoever, in my view, justifies that. The only reason why we are even having this argument in the first place is because, like I said, we had made political capital out of this, fetish or fad of, an EMT, and which is sort of come back, to bite us. So I agree completely with Prof that we've got to go back to basics and fundamental. The decision is for the running mate to choose who they feel best complements their kind of weaknesses and can help them get more votes. What you want is the 50 plus 1% at the end of the day. And then when you come into power, the ability to govern effectively and deliver the gains of economic development to the length and the breadth of the country. And in that regard, I don't think you need an economist necessarily to do that. I am an economist myself. I'm a finance person myself. But from what I have seen in this space and working in other countries and all of that, what you need is a proper technical advisory team that has that mandate and can, advise and to an extent even sort of enforce. So I had even argued in times past that even at Parliament, like the way here in the UK, you've got the Office for Budget Responsibility. In the UK, you have the Congressional Budget. In the US, the Congressional Budget Office. You need to have some sort of similar creature or statute that allows you to keep a check on, some of the policies that the governments are running, run the numbers and say, okay, do we have fiscal space to do this or not? And not until you have the wherewithal, right, or the backing from such authority, you are unable to, to spend. We saw what happened with Liz Truss and Kwesi Kwarteng late last year in the UK, where they disregarded the advice of the OBR, went out and the market, punished them heavily for that. That is where we should be going in my view. So I completely agree with Prof. You don't need an economist necessarily as your VIP. And even if we accepted the argument that you need some sort of economic management team, which in my have argued that may not necessarily be the case, again, you don't need an economist to head that team. Over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Theo Achampo. So at this point, we are opening up for your questions, your contributions, and all that. So I'll be reading your tweets, and then also you can send us a request. We'll make you a speaker and allow you to, make your point. So we're going to start with Sir Benjamin. Sir Benjamin, if you can unmute yourself and make your point, I'll go and pick your questions as well, or your contributions. And you who is listening to us, if you have any point you want to make, or you have a question you want to ask of even our guest, why not? You are allowed to send us a request. We accept. We allow you to also make your point. You just have to be as decorum as you can, and then go straight to the point. Sir Benjamin, can you unmute yourself, please? Hello, Sir Benjamin. Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. Did you call me?
Yes. Make your point. You
I don't
requested
have any points right now. I was just listening. Sorry. Can you guys hear me? Everybody's quiet. Can I hear anybody?
Oh, sorry. I think I had put off my. I'm so sorry. I had put off my. I was speaking. I thought everybody could hear me. So sorry. Okay, so let me go to Ben Boache. Ben Boache, you are a speaker now. Go ahead, make your point. Oh, I think I've lost Ben. Ben, you can send us a request again. We'll accept it and allow you to speak. But then let me take Mike Ampany's point or question on Twitter. He says, we keep talking about constitutional reforms, and in this case, the need for checks and balance via an economic management team or council. However, I think the laptop is back. However, reforms to create checks and balances to reduce executive power has never been a strong point of Ghanaian political class. So it's a question that he's asking. So I'll put that question to Dr. Theo Achampo. Hello, Dr. Theo Achampo. Before you answer that question for us, let me take Apia. I think I lost Apia as well. I just accepted him as a speaker. Benjamin Boache, can you hear me? If you can unmute yourself and make your point. Hello, Ben. We've accepted you to be a speaker. Okay, let me go
I'm
to
still
Apia.
connected, though.
Okay, Apia, go ahead. Go make your point.
Thank you very much. Great space. I think that we question, should we have economic management team or economic advisory council? I think that at this point we don't need any of them. I believe that the finance ministry, itself has a board, right? And the board is to advise, and the board is also put up by the executive. Therefore, definitely there is a connection between the ministry and the presidency, i.e., cabinet. So I do not see the role that the advisory team would play or the economic management team would play that the board or members cannot play at this moment. I believe that they are the individuals that are always put there have that technical know-how to execute their mandate. So we don't need them at this point. We don't. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've made your point, Apia. Benjamin. Hello, Benjamin Boache. Can you unmute yourself and make your point? Okay, I think that we can hear Ben. But Dr. Tia Champo, I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Dr. Tia Champo. Okay, then let me come to Professor Kobe Mensah. Professor Kobe Mensah, I mean, Mike is saying that for a very long time, reforms to create checks and balances to reduce executive power has never been a strong point. It's not something that we have really, really, as a country, put our minds to it. What is causing this, please?
Okay, thank you so much. I think that is a legitimate, and I think one that a lot of people have actually, talked about. I remember my early days in this country when I came back, 2013, 14. I actually won a grant to be part of the CRC, the Constitutional Review, committee's work. Our work was to collect views from some of the communities and then write a report, to be added to the Constitutional Review. Since then, obviously, the Constitutional Review's work hadn't been implemented. And obviously, because of legal issues, I wouldn't be able to, competently, articulate it. But as far as I know, the basic is that there was a constitutionality issue that, or legal issue, if I should put, that actually, impeded the then administration to go ahead. I understand that some people took it to court or they put some legal constraint on it. And then, of course, you cannot, as an executive, single-handedly, push that thing through. I mean, you have to go through a whole raft of constitutional issues, which some people say that it will cost us quite a lot in doing that, obviously, barring the legal issue. So I think that it's something that people have talked about, the constitutional review, so that it could actually limit the powers. But we have, obviously, the former president of blessed memory, Atta Mills, set that thing in motion. Mahama came, he wanted to continue. But I understand that there had been legal issues with it. And I'm not sure whether Parliament itself has the appetite. Obviously, the both houses, I mean, the minority and majority, have a certain appetite to see to it that the legal constraint could be taken off and then for the whole process to complete. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's something that we have all called for legitimately.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll still come back to you, but ladies and gentlemen, this is the point where you have your say, or if you have any questions on your mind, we allow you to ask. You tweet at Norvan Report, or you send us a request to become a speaker, and then we allow you to ask your question or make your contribution. And so you can do that. And there's a question that has come from Mike Ampene again, and this time he is asking the question in the area where he's asking what is the path. He says, what is the just a second, I think I've lost this. There's a lot of questions that are being posted on Twitter. Okay, where's the latest one that he sent? Wow. I just lost it, but I'm sure when I see it, I'll come back to it. But let me ask you, Dr. Thea Champo, if you can hear me. Okay, I think we're having some internet issues. I think today one of the networks all went down. We had to move on to a different one, and so we are losing a lot of our speakers. So, I mean, very finally, Professor Kopi-Mensah, let me ask. So, would you recommend, per the discussions that have gone on? I mean, you are a political marketing analyst, but then would you say we should have an economic management team, or it should be an advisory council with the powers to be able to bite and deal with the economic issues as and when we face them?
Well, I may not be competent in addressing that, but I could actually draw on one of my areas of teachings. When you talk about government business, or even when we look at power, all right, always there must be what we call plurality in a certain polity. All right, when we talk about plurality, we are talking about different of varied power blocks or stakeholders that could actually serve as a counterbalance of authority against other structures, so that in the system there would always be fairness, equity, there will always be efficiency, etc. So if I have to draw on that particular knowledge, I would say that it would not be anything bad if we have two bodies or three bodies whose work actually sort of intertwine in a manner that we can actually offer an optimum level of what do you call advice. I'm sure Professor Gachi would be competent enough. Professor Gachi and of course Dr. Champa will be competent enough to say. But if I draw on my political what do you call lenses in terms of political theory lenses, we always ensure that there are countervailing powers that could make sure that we are taking optimum level of decision. So if that particular EMT is not going to cost us in terms of perks, in terms of benefit that had to be given to them, but they're actually serving as a counterbalance to check the decisions of the other, what we call Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, and vice versa. I think that is not a bad idea. But of course, usually with such political structures, when we put them in place, what we get in return is a certain benefit that people will be taken out of the system, and that is what makes it disappointing. But if that is not the case, then of course I don't think that it's a bad idea to have two systems counter-checking and making sure they're taking optimum decisions.
Thank you very much, Professor Kopi-Mensah. And I want to say a very big thank you to Professor John Gachi, who is also a professor of finance and economist and also he's the dean of the business school at the University of Cape Coast. I want to say a big thank you to you, Professor Kopi-Mensah, senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, political marketing analyst. One that you would, as you think of playing in the space of politics, marketing and branding yourself is very important. So he's one of the people you can reach out to who can help you with strategy as to how you can project yourself properly and appropriately to be accepted when you are being put out there. We want to also say a very big thank you to Dr. Theo Achampo, who is a political risk analyst and a lecturer at the University of Aberdeen in the UK. I mean, he's also one person you can get in touch with, and he can do all the risk analysis as far as your political career is concerned. So for those of you who want to play in that area, these are people that you can reach out to. And those of you listening or watching us on television on ABC News GH, we say a very big thank you to you for your time tonight. And the topic has been, should Ghana have an economic management team or an economic advisory council? With a critical question of the political risk of having a running mate or a vice president to head the economic management team. Tonight, you heard the verdict. Really, we don't need an economist to be our vice president or to be a running mate. And the economic management team should be one that should have inclusivity, which means that we should draw people from diverse of areas to, come together to be the economic management team and should be given a legal, beg your pardon, a legal backing to advise and ensure that these advice are enforced or accepted by cabinet and, become policy that is rolled out to help manage the economy as a whole. My name has been, or is, or remains Norvan Hayford, your moderator for tonight. And I want to thank all of you for making time to join us. And it's been another interesting discussion. We've all learned a lot. And if you want to know about Norvan Reports is a unique data, business, and financial portal aimed at providing accurate, impartial reporting of business news in Ghana, Africa, and around the world. And we do this from a truly independent reporting and analysis viewpoint. We are very unbiased. We'll give you the opportunity to have your say and let us understand. And we are there to also project your business and what you do in the area of business. Get in touch with us anytime on 0264 511013. So you can always get in touch with us. And if you want to be receiving the business news from us, you are sure that before 6 a.m., you receive the top business news from us. The same number, WhatsApp us and tell us that you would like to be receiving our top stories or business news from the Norvan Report team. Or you can look for our channel on WhatsApp and you're sure that every morning you have it. On WhatsApp, it's Norvan Report. On X, it's Norvan Report. On Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, it's still Norvan Report at Norvan Report. So you can always get in touch with us on all these platforms and then get the news that you need to get. And I'll repeat the number. If you're outside the country, it's +233 and it's 264 511013. Have a very good evening. We thank you all for making time and